So it is official. The paperwork has been pulled. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, who won in a landslide down in the Sunshine State, is officially in the race for president, which is about as anticlimactic as me saying good afternoon to you on this Wednesday. We knew it was happening, and we knew he was going to make it. The question is, in what state do we find him? We've got some of the talking heads who, they need something to say, and I'm one of them, and I'll admit that. But I'm not going to tell you that Trump has it locked in, because I lived through Scott Walker and I've lived through Jeb Bush, and they were the anointed ones at one point within the Republican Party. And Trump's got more icebergs around his ship than any former candidate. And that is going to take some artful navigating on his part. Now, under normal circumstances, there would be something on cable news. It would be televised on all three of them. There'd be lots of bunting, maybe a choir or a band. And then there would be a sit-down with a couple of friendly newsies on selected sites. This is going to be different. It's going to be on Twitter. So let's break down the pluses and minuses of this approach and where we find Ron DeSantis and where he could be headed. John Selleck is the founder and CEO of Harbor Strategic Public Affairs, one of the sharpest political minds out there in our kitchen cabinet that we rely on. John, good afternoon.
Hey, Guy, how you doing?
Excellent. This is kind of a moment. What do you make of the choice of Twitter? I mean, it's a little bit poetic in terms of kind of thumbing his nose at the former president by taking on his favorite social media platform. Is it a plus or a minus that he's not having this in maybe a bigger setting?
Well, it's definitely different. That we know that, and the way it plays out will tell if it's a true plus or minus. It kind of reminds me a little bit for anybody who watches the show Succession on TV. We're seeing kind of this fight of who's going to respect Logan Roy and who's not. And so in this case, DeSantis is thumbing his nose in part at the family that owns Fox News. He's buddying up to Elon Musk, which also is sort of maybe a thumb in the eye of Trump by Elon Musk. There's all these relationship things going on there, and I do think DeSantis is going to end up being on Fox News later in the evening. But with the start on Twitter, this is something we have not seen before. It's going to be pretty fascinating to see how it plays out. So,
is there a concern or a possibility that you could even get upstaged by Elon Musk? And I mean, is Elon in on the messaging? I mean, you want to be in control of that early message. To some degree, are you relinquishing that to him by not doing your staged event?
Yeah, you are. And there's no telling what he'll say if he suddenly, it sort of shows through his actions or his words that Musk was more interested in getting the Twitter traffic than he was about buddying up right to DeSantis. So tomorrow he'll turn around and say something nice about Trump, and you'll say to yourself, what was that all about? Well, it was about Musk making Twitter more profitable. I mean, Musk definitely is moving Twitter even further to the right by bringing on Tucker Carlson and getting this announcement on here. And I'm sure if Donald Trump wants to go on there, he wants the clicks, he's going to bring him on there. So it won't be DeSantis only.
I mean, we know that back in November, Trump was invited back to Twitter, but he hasn't used it because he's got this loyalty, and understandably so, to Truth Social. But wouldn't this be kind of the perfect night to maybe around 5:58 drop a monster tweet?
Well, it's already typed in. It's just waiting to hit send right now.
Okay, it's just
absolutely. But you see, it's interesting to watch how politics is progressing. We are seeing some very different things, like making an announcement on Twitter instead of doing a big rollout in your hometown, like Senator Scott did yesterday. And some of the other people who have already run, it's going to be all social. We're not. And the flip side is that as the reporters cover these kind of things, they're saying there's already headlines right now. If you do a Google News search, it talks about how DeSantis failing to do announcement event by tradition in his own hometown of Dunedin, Florida. So all these kind of like changes in the system are being played out right in front of us. But what DeSantis needs to do is get out there and announce that he's running for president. For all of us who pay attention and are on Twitter, which is very few, relatively speaking, we know he's running. We know about him. But he has a lot of people to introduce himself to, and he needs to get in there because everyone else has not waited for him. Everyone else got in before he did. And I think that's why we saw his super PAC staff, which is loaded with top consultants from D.C., went out there in the last 2 days and did a bunch of exclusive interviews with the New York Times and others, laying out the hundreds of millions that they're going to spend on ground game and all the field organizers they're going to have out there. They're trying to show that they are going to run a campaign the old-fashioned way, actually, from the ground up. And that's what you have to do in Iowa, and that's what you have to do in New Hampshire.
And he's well-funded, and he's got, and he met with GOP donors. We haven't heard that any of them told him no. You don't get too many opportunities to reintroduce yourself. And this is one of those rare opportunities you got a second, maybe a third chance at making a good first impression. So when he goes out there tonight, obviously you're going to demonize the opposition. But then, do you talk about a more optimistic message similar to Tim Scott? Do you talk about the America as you see it, that is family friendly and that protects the rights of the unborn and is dedicated to freedom and liberty? How far do you go to being a softer and more approachable Ron DeSantis, not just the culture warrior?
Well, this may reflect his personality because there's plenty of stuff out there, as you know, that talks about how he's a prickly guy or he doesn't enjoy small talking the donors. I've seen a lot of successful politicians and business leaders who are just like that because they're focused with their eyes on the prize. But I think to your point tonight, he needs to show personality because he is only getting that first time to introduce himself. And if he can't show personality, because that's not a style, he needs to at least start laying out his relatability. You know, his family comes from Ohio in the steel industry. His wife had breast cancer. He's got young kids.
He's a military man.
Right, a military man. How could I forget that, right? So he's got a ton of stuff to talk about. And I think he's been a little bit of a straitjacket in that if the whole idea of Trump is personality, he's trying to say, I'm all business. And so he hasn't talked about himself. He's trying to say, I actually accomplish. I get things done. I don't have the chaos. I don't have the drama. So he hasn't talked about himself a lot. Maybe that's suited his personality overall, but now he's going to have to add that. And I think this first set of announcements is the time to start doing it.
So how hard do you poke the front runner? Trump right now in the newest CNN poll has 53%, so he is the first choice. But 85%, 84% are saying we would consider Trump, DeSantis. 61% say they'd consider Nikki Haley and Tim Scott. I think Mike Pence is at 54%. So there are open minds out there willing to be persuaded. But how far do you go in poking the front runner? Or do you do that through surrogates? Or do you do that through code by saying, well, we need a winning culture and things like that?
Well, I think that's what he's going to try to do is the latter. He's going to try to say we need a winning culture. He's talked a lot. His surrogates, to the extent they're operatives, have been out there showing that, yeah, go ahead and look at those national polls. That's not how we elect a president. You need to look at Nevada, and you need to look at Michigan. Look at the general election polls. When they put DeSantis up against Biden, he's winning by 3 points. When they put Trump up against Biden, he's losing by 3 points. They're going to try to make that argument as much as they can without having to attack him. And that's really the trick of this entire operation for him, is how much can he take away from Trump by going after him. I think they tried to go after him on the age issue, and I don't think it works. I think the Democrats also think that the age issue is wiped out by Trump's age. But regardless of how you feel about some of the things he said in the CNN interview, he stood up there for an hour and controlled the thing. Joe Biden could not do that. So the age attack that came from the DeSantis campaign was that he's out of touch and he's from the past, not that he was incoherent and incompetent. And that's pretty thin gruel.
All right. Well, we will wait to see how he navigates that and where he finds the sweet spot. He did drop a video last night that was kind of an introductory thing to set up tonight's announcement. And as you said, he's sitting down with Trey Gowdy at 8 p.m. in the old Tucker Carlson slot on Fox. So it will somewhat be a friendly venue there. But it's going to be a Donnybrook, and as of today, John, it's officially on. So our world just got a little more interesting.
Got a lot more interesting, and Ron DeSantis absolutely has a path to victory in the Republican primary. We got a lot of time to go. We got a lot of people who are in that probably will have to drop out because they won't have the money to keep going. And we're going to be talking about this a lot more, that's for sure, but at least it's finally started.
Yeah. John, thanks so much. We look forward to it.
All right, thanks.
All right, so to you, dear listener, do you even know how to find the DeSantis announcement? Because I'm not sure I do. What do you want to hear from the Florida governor tonight? How open are you to considering him as the top of the ticket? And is Twitter the new Fox? Do you consider Twitter a better venue for conservative ideas than Fox News Channel? Or is that still your go-to?